Right, so welcome everyone. Nowadays, people are creating amazing things with in the world of data. And especially in the last few years that data became available to us, more and more data becoming available to us. This gives us the opportunity to create powerful visuals. And I would like to explore two examples that I really like and talk about them. The first one is related to kind of recent news. It's the immigration visualization. I don't know if you've ever seen, but we can see beautiful flows of immigrants traveling all towards Europe. We can also see very clearly which countries are receiving the most immigrants, and this is through the time, as we can see on the top of the visualization. Once we interact with it, let's say if we hover on France, we can see which countries are sending the most immigrants to France. It's simple and powerful. The second example is from Google. Google has the data, and of course they can visualize many things. In this example, it's a simple timeline that visualizes the most searched words in 2015. I would like to hover in July, because Greece, my country, made it to the top. Not for a good reason, though. Greece's fault, Europe's fault, let's not go into politics. But anyway, the point is that, again, it's such a simple example and so powerful. There are so many other examples out there that you can find online, of course. And there are some books that you can flick around and you can find really interesting examples for inspiration. The second one and the third one, which is knowledge is beautiful and information is beautiful, the author, he also made a good speech on TED. So go online and have a look at it. Data turns into visuals. The problem, however, is that the visualization stops there. It communicates a narrative visually, instead of textually. It impresses the audience and tells a story at a glance, but finally the visualization itself becomes art and nothing more. A short life cycle, interesting but very short. We believe that the visualization is more than that. Visuals turn into insights. Analysis, discovery, explorations are some of the values that a visualization can really offer. Sorry. We think that it is important to identify problems, to suggest solutions, and effectively ask the question, what's next? People love predictions. People want to know the future. Beauty becomes usefulness, and our aim is to design something that is useful. This is what we do. This is what we deliver to our clients. We design engaging and interactive end products that help people do the following: perform their roles more effectively, make better and faster decisions, and be informed at all times. They don't want to miss a thing. So this is what we do, and this is who we are. Jonny on the left with his favorite instrument, and I'm on the right with my doll. Actually, it's not just a doll, it's a Tim Burton doll. I hope you know him, he's a great artist. Jonny is the user experience designer, and I'm the visual designer. And in projects, usually we approach things in a different way, but we think we complement each other. And we've seen that in many projects, actually in 8 different projects that we work together. Most of them in the financial and services industry, which is an industry that has lots of data and complex data. One of them, in 2010, which actually it was the first one, we had to identify what's the precisely what's going to happen in the bank. What's the most urgent risk in the bank? Another example is for the transportation industry, where the aim was to simplify a user experience for the maintenance engineers to be able to find the fault in the brake system and be able to repair it. And very recently, in 2018, once again, we had the same challenge as 2010, that the risk was there, and we have to find the most, the biggest risk that the bank had to face. So those are some of the projects that we've done. So please welcome Jonny, that he will take you through from 2010 through all our projects that we've done. Thank you very much.
He's actually coming back. So hi, I'm Jonny. So I started life as a business analyst. So I kind of fell in love with getting my hands into data, but I never really thought I'd be talking about anything creative. So I started my life as a worker about here in 2008, and I got kidnapped by the head of UX at the company that I was working for, who's back there. And I think that was a very lucky thing. Like, I guess the best thing about that for me just then was it got me a ticket to working with people like Savvas who come from a creative background. And I think, like, very early on in some of the first projects we worked on, I kind of loved that, like, mush of myself and people like me, people like you in the audience who love, like, the logic and data side of life, and then the people that come from that fine art background. I think that conversation, that tension between the two can be really awesome. So what we wanted to do was just to show you an example of one of the projects we did early on, quite a long time ago now, and it was this one right here. So the main challenge that the bank had, they had invested loads in this awesome database. It was really clever, had loads of different dimensions. It pretty much told you the answer to anything you wanted to know, but you needed a PhD in quantity to be able to work that out. So our challenge was to bring that data to life. That's what we started doing. We started sketching and sketching and sketching. We investigated size, colour, shape, form, all the different ways we could possibly imagine of bringing all of those dimensions of that data to life. It was a truly creative process. I think it was kind of the first thing I fell in love with about UX, and we brought people into the room that had no interest in being involved in what they saw as a data project. That was like the driest thing they could imagine. Their job was to go and sell lots of stuff and make lots of money. But for them, this was fun. This was engaging. And do you know what? We needed them, because we needed their input. We needed to know what they actually needed to do. And we found this creative process a great way of making that data be the best it could be. Everyone loves looking at a map of the world, don't they? It was a great way of engaging people, and in this case, seeing where my risk lies across the globe. So take this one here, and like this, I think now is a fairly established visualization, but at the time, this came from a blank piece of paper and just lots and lots of brainstorms about how we could visualize one big number broken down into 5 different dimensions at the same time, so that I could see, okay, my risk is huge numbers, 40 billion, and by region in the top right, it's mainly in North America. By industry, it's mainly in that one. And by getting people to tell us, no, that's not how I'd look at it, that doesn't work at all, we were able to tune those visualizations and finally hit it at something that hit the mark. We played around quite a lot with movement as well. So that thing moved. You remember, part of our challenge was to really bring it to life. This was called the Wheel of Fortune, obviously. So I can drill into this scarily high number, the risk to EMEA, and see how that breaks down by country on the right. Or I can switch it to industry, so I can see that we're mainly exposed. Our risk is mainly in one area. That was our challenge. Our challenge was all about bringing it to life. The Treasury Department of a bank is perhaps the darkest corridor of complexity I've ever walked down. This was our attempt to shine a light on that dark area. Here you're looking at the inflows and outflows of cash into a bank. So there's the inflows. The bigger the bar, the bigger the flow. There's the outflows in pink. And this was a way that you could toggle the different dimensions of analysis in the data. This is from YouTube, actually. I'm just going to play the video. And I could toggle the dimensions on the left to see, okay, well, what currency is that coming from? Okay, it's mainly dollars. Or what region is it coming from? Okay, it's mainly London and a bit of Americas. We put a lot of effort into making that data have a personality. You could say that the investment in the shadow, perfectly reflecting what's going on above, was a bit, over the top. But again, our challenge was really to bring it to life. Okay, so how did we do? It's a very exciting project. Went on for quite a while. How did we do? I think the answer is like meh. It was kind of all right. It had some really good things. We got people engaged. We got people thinking about how they could use this, all this data that was previously invisible to everyone, as a basis of making decisions. It was certainly good for people who didn't really know that much about the subject, perhaps people like you and me, to get an intro into, what are the big numbers at this organisation. But fundamentally, we weren't answering the right questions. We weren't telling people news. That lovely picture you just saw wasn't news to anyone. The person whose job it was to make decisions about cash ins and outs every day knew pretty much that was what it was going to look like. That wasn't the right question that we should have been answering. It didn't form the basis of business decisions. So at the end of the project, we sat down and again in a dark room, and we over the following months we kind of made our minds up that we would never do that again. We would never make these mistakes again. This is the first mistake we made. There was a big imbalance, we think, of where we spent our time researching. Most of the ideas, most of the creative energy came from analysing the data. A little bit came from analysing what real people really need to do, and that balance we thought was wrong. I think what we've done is kind of make risk beautiful. Well, that's great if you're sitting at a coffee table and you've got half an hour to kill and you just want to know how beautiful risk can be, but it's not that great if the CEO is calling you and telling you, or asking you rather, how much has our risk moved in Egypt and what the hell are we going to do about it? So we decided we're never going to do that again. So we started rating all the projects we've done on a usefulness scale rather than a beautifulness scale. That's the scale roughly. So I've shown you this one. We just wanted to show you another couple of examples. I guess the reason I'm showing you that one is that by hopefully in a couple of minutes when we show you what we think was a much more useful thing that we designed recently, hopefully you'll see why. Savvas.
Yes. So from probably from we went to all right, works. So the next one was the one I said before. It's for the transportation industry, and we had the opportunity to work with a company called Knorr-Bremse. Probably none of you heard of it. It's a German company that they have their product is the brake of the trains. And they say it's a state of the art. Actually, they won an award from the Queen, and many countries is using this braking system. For example, Japan. I know that it's also in Athens. It's in London Underground as well. And it's a tool, a real-time data visualization for the train braking system. This time, we invested time spending time with the actual users, which were the maintenance engineers, and we asked them, we tried to find what's the most important thing for them, and the aim was to design an application that is very simple, a very simple user interface that they will be able to find where is the fault, and of course be able to understand how they can repair it. And this is what we've done. So that's one of the dashboards, that's the main dashboard, and it has clearly two areas. The top area, which shows the whole train, and it shows every carriage and every single braking system, because every carriage has the front and the back. The red dots, of course, is the faulty ones, and all you have to do is just select one of them. The interaction is very simplistic. You select one of them, and you get a card below with all the information you need. Valve information, pressures, and many other things, which I don't know what they mean, but it doesn't matter. They know what it means. The engineers know what they mean. And the fun bit in this project was actually the engineers. They knew inside out how this braking system looks like, and they had a 3D representation of it. So we used it. You flip the card, and you go to the fault card where you can see the actual how it looks like. You can see it highlights, the system highlights where the faulty parts are. And of course you can find information like when it was built, who positioned it, if it needs to be changed, and other information that helps them understand how to repair the actual part for the braking system. So that was the second example. Jonny?
Okay, cool. So let's I guess bring us up to date with something we did quite recently, which was exactly the same problem as we solved or didn't solve in 2010. So we thought it'd be useful to just share some of the lessons that we learned, some of the reasons why we thought one of the things we designed works a lot better than the other. So here they are. So I guess the first thing is not rocket science. The first thing was user research. We got a lot more scientific in the way that we approached research, making sure that we're designing the right thing fundamentally by understanding what these people at their desks do, what they do first thing in the morning, how they prepare for a big scary meeting with a bank regulator, who they need to work with on a day in day out basis, and we found that as many of you would have found, that by doing that research exercise, we actually made the data work a lot harder for us, because we were able to target it at precisely the answers that people needed, rather than trying to paint everything and make everything beautiful. So it started as a pretty simple thing. The first thing we tried to do was to answer. Well, the first thing we tried to do was to answer the main question which the research popped up. What's the news? What are the headlines? What's the thing? If I'm going to look at one thing today, what does it need to be? Okay, so the first thing we tried to do was codify the business logic which was in people's heads. So we spent a lot of time watching people annotate printed out horrendous tabular pieces of paper with loads of data on it. We tried to understand what were the informal thresholds in their heads that were prompting them to colour that bit red, that bit orange, scribble over that. And we I guess codified that logic into business rules with thresholds. And we tested that logic and the exceptions that was spitting out with those same users. And over a period of a few weeks, maybe a month, we thought we got to a place where we were chucking up the same types of exceptions that they were scribbling themselves. So success, right? We managed to prioritise all of these millions of data events into a digestible list of events. So we were done. Apart from we absolutely weren't done. We definitely weren't there, because this information was far too granular. It wasn't really actionable. It was too low level. So we tried again. So the next thing we did was try and make sense of all those hundreds of different freaks or business breaches that were going on, and we tried to identify the underlying themes, which is obviously a lot more difficult from a data point of view. And that's this bit here. So we tried to see, okay, what are the underlying patterns in those 65 or 70 breaches, and group them into things that meant something. Is it a business division, which someone's in charge of? Is it an event that's happening in the world which people can cling on to? Is it a region? Things that are tangible enough, things that form the basis around which decisions were made. So we thought that was really smart when we did it, but a bit of user testing told us that was still nowhere near enough. People wouldn't rely on this. Why not? Because I guess they didn't trust that a machine could do that analysis for them. I mean, fair enough. So the next challenge was how to try and make that machine better. So we tried in a fairly simple way to help the machine learn by allowing people to give simple feedback on whether one of the exceptions was indeed newsworthy or not, by simply swiping and saying, no, ignore this, for some reason that's not what I wanted to see. So the machine got smarter, the algorithm got smarter, but people weren't still happy with it. Still wasn't the basis on which they were making decisions. They were still getting their pieces of paper and scribbling on these huge tables of data. One of the main blockers at that stage we saw was the lack of a human touch. So the machine alone clearly wasn't going to cut it. It clearly wasn't going to go to the top of the pecking order of all the tools that they could use to make those decisions. So they needed the human touch to add, I guess, the human intelligence alongside the data intelligence. That's that bit there. So every day you'd have a summary of what was going on in this particular area of risk by the person whose job it is to know about that area, and that they and the machine would work together to suggest what things should everyone be looking at. So the machine would say, hey, I think this is what's going on, and then the human would say, actually not, it's, yep, that one, not that one, yes. And that would become the news that everyone else would digest. That was a big leap. So that combination of human and data intelligence, I guess, or human and computer intelligence, was a big leap forward to adoption in this tool. People started using it to base their decisions on, which was one of our goals. So we were quite excited about that. When people started using it, we got access to an awesome new range of data, which we were able to then use in the app. So then you can start seeing, okay, well, how many people are looking at this thing? How many people are commenting on that thing? Which obviously is going to influence what people think is news. So that became another input to the algorithm to push stuff up to the top of the list. The type of thing that happens all the time in consumer products that we all use. We just haven't seen it used in the context of an investment bank decision support application, which tends to be based on the kind of the hard data and not the soft stuff. We found that was a really powerful addition. A couple of other things that we just, I guess, learned on this project. One thing was about data quality. So we're here talking about how data can be a platform for creativity. I think it's fair to say that it can also be a huge blocker as well. Quite often if you try and have a discussion about the future, about how a process could be made better, about how a team could manage something better, you'll just get shut down with, do you know what, we don't have the data for that, so I'm not even going to start having that conversation. Which is fair enough, if their goal is short-term products that they need to ship soon. But, it does sometimes get in the way of being able to articulate a vision for 2-3 years out if you're constraining yourself from the data. So we really tried hard to push that with our customers and get them to say, okay, this piece of data, for example, isn't perfect, but we're going to put it in there anyway, and we're going to flag that it's not great, but we're still going to get the product out there, because that might even put the pressure on the data exercise to get that bit of data better in the future. Allowing people to do something with that data we thought was important. Okay, getting someone to the eureka moment, like, aha, our risk is all in Greece, is good, but if they then don't know what to do with that, then you're not embedding that tool in the, I guess, the flow, the user experience of that person's daily life. So, when we added simple commenting and assigning and sharing, all the sorts of things that people do on email into the app, adoption went up, a hell of a lot. Again, that wasn't necessarily a data thing, but it was by adding those tools to something which was harnessing all that data, that data was able to be shared and used a lot more and become more useful. I think that the last thing I'd say about this, the learnings we had here, was that we only really focused on the clever bit on the right hand side, but the application as a whole had lots of I guess, standard data interrogation types of visualization, the likes of which we were sketching 10 years ago. I think it's fair to say that now there's kind of established patterns for lots of that stuff out there, which is great, because we don't need to spend weeks and months sketching what it looks like. So we allow the tools that are out there to do that, so we can focus on the stuff on top of that, which is very different to 10 years ago. So we think we kind of got there. We think, this was our usefulness scale. So we think, we've kind of got to a place where people are using this tool that we designed to perform their roles, more effectively than they would have done otherwise. That they're making better, faster decisions. It's truly a useful tool, and we just thought that list of things that we kind of learned along the way would be kind of thought provoking for you guys here today. Our industry is quite niche. We do fairly unsexy applications for a fairly unsexy part of the world. Decision support applications for big banks. But I think some of these principles are will be equally true in other data heavy areas as well. So I hope you find it very interesting. We didn't forget about visualization and bespoke stuff. We did some awesome, beautiful stuff as well. That wasn't the point. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your attention.